Good morning. Finance Committee is called to order at 10:42 on January 4th. Sorry about the technical delay at this time. I'll accept a motion to amend the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add SA 2423.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, and let me interject that all members are present. This time I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes of 12/21/22.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we have a couple of appropriations on the agenda. The first one is, do you see it, Alderwoman Finlayson? It's SA
23.
23-22.
23.
23-23.
23-23. Oh, Happy New Year, everybody. Is there anyone here to discuss that? So we'll go right into discussion. And also for the record, Alderwoman Finlayson is here via Skype.
Good morning. I'm Acting Captain Migueth with the Police Department, and I believe that's mine for, that was for the EMSN grant through the county. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute, 23-22 or 23-23? Okay, 20. Oh, okay, yes. So that's the gun violence reduction grant that we got from the state. And it basically, it pays for overtime for investigations and arrests related to reducing gun violence here in the city. This is the first year that we've gotten this grant.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year that we've gotten the grant, and it's paying for overtime. Do you have an idea of how much overtime we've in the past accumulated for this type of?
I would have to look. We switched our focus to this grant from the EMSN grant that we used to get directly from the state. This year, we're getting that through the county because the EMSN grant focuses on criminal networks, and we can't always demonstrate a relationship to a network with the gun violence and crimes that we investigate. And so this seemed to be a better fit while we still want to work the EMSN grant as well for our criminal networks that we identify. We chose this because it doesn't have that other kind of requirement related to it. In the past, we've spent certainly more than $25,000 in overtime through the EMSN grant, but it also funded part of two people's salaries. So I don't know off the top of my head, but if I had to say a ballpark, I would say it would probably be somewhere in the area of 50,000 or so. And so we're looking forward to working this grant this year and hoping that they will have it again next year that we can put in for and demonstrate a need for more overtime to get a bigger grant next year.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And congratulations on the new grant.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you. I'm getting feedback, so bear with me. Captain, with the change of administrations, do we expect to be doing business differently with the Office of Crime Prevention and Control?
We haven't gotten any indication of that. As far as as we can tell in the conversations that we've had, meetings that we've had with the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services, things are going along the same. I don't know if things will change in the future. We'll kind of have to see, which grants come out this spring and how things go with requirements for those grants and performance measures and reporting requirements.
Well, I'm glad that you're on it. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Captain, last time we reviewed a supplementary appropriation that was also from the Office of Crime Control and Prevention. It's interesting that they separate these grants out that way. Just for my own knowledge, how many grants are there under this, with this source? Are they just...
Well, from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services, they do have many grants.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head any other ones that are similar to these two.
Yeah, okay.
The other one I know the other one we currently get from them is the Community Program Grant Fund, which was the one we used last year for the vision workshops. And they ended up producing the photography and writing samples that were showcased downstairs for a little while.
And are you the one proactively dealing with them, or?
Yes. So whenever they release an announcement that a grant's been open for application, then we review that and see if it's a good fit for what we're doing and where we want to go, and then apply for it if so.
Well, as Alderwoman Finlayson said, keep it going.
Yeah, we try to.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to SA 2323.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, thank you for that. And we have added to the agenda, I don't know if Alderwoman Finlayson has a copy, but it's SA 24-23. It might be in your email.
Okay.
In our email.
That email would have come from Ms. Jack Johnson?
Yes, SA 24-23. This is great news. Sorry, spoiler alert. Let me know when you're ready, Alderwoman Finlayson.
Did you say it was 2423?
Yes.
It's in the same. It's in the same email as fee waivers.
It's in the same email as fee waivers.
I have it. I'm trying to read it. It's on my phone.
Okay.
Is this the one for 527,921?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Got
we'll
it.
go right into discussion on this one. Captain?
Yes, so this is the State Aid for Police Protection Grant, which is another one that we get through the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services. This one, we've gotten this one for at least several years. It pays for sworn police officer salaries. And historically, we've gotten somewhere around $900,000 to $1 million a year. So it pays for approximately 8 to 10 officers. This year, or at least for FY23, it's a formula grant. And so we send them our numbers for how many sworn officers we have. They also look at the NIBRS or UCR crime stats that we submit to the state. And so then they make a decision as to how much each jurisdiction is going to receive based on those formulas, what our budget is, how our budget breaks down. And this year, they just put something in their material that mentioned them focusing on different areas. And I don't know what those areas were, but apparently their refocus resulted in an additional, basically 50% that we'd gotten the year before. So we got the additional 527,000. So it'll cover even more of the salaries than we have historically. So it is really good news.
A question, is the intent to be responsive or to assist us in their legislation that they passed a couple of years ago that required a lot of things that we had to add?
For the state legislation, I don't think that was the intent.
Okay.
I'd have to check, but I know that I believe it was Governor Hogan, it may even been before him, enacted this grant statewide to support law enforcement agencies across the state in being able to hire officers and pay for their salaries for the general goal of public safety.
Questions? Alderwoman Finlayson?
No, I would make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation for SA 2423.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good news. I see Director Dickinson smiling. Next on the agenda, we have an update from Director Dickinson. And under that category, I just want to tell my colleagues that I did ask for a status of our self-insurance fund, and I asked for a status of our fee waivers. You can speak to that in whatever order, or do you want to give a general update first? Director Dickinson?
Sure. I will, right before the meeting, a few minutes before the meeting, I distributed a summary of the self-insurance fund. You said you wanted an update on the fund, and this information you see before you is coming out of our financial system. And it's got a trend of 4 years plus the 23 projected as to where the fund stands now. Now, this is the self-insurance fund that handles our workers' compensation liability, our general liability, and any vehicle claims that we incur during the year. And in the fund, we recognize the claim payments and also any administrative costs involved in the settlement and management of those claims. We maintain a very detailed database of claims through our administrator, and that's handled by the Office of Law and Corey, our risk manager, and they track each individual claim within that database and the cost involved and the current status, et cetera. And this shows you where the fund is at, and I want to point out that the cash in the fund is in excess of the current liabilities, the reserve liability. That reserve liability that we record in the fund is determined by an actuary who takes the claims data that Corey has and uses actuarial calculations to project how much will those claims pay out year over year over year, and calculate at the end of every fiscal year what the liability should be in our fund to make sure we're covered for the estimated future payouts of the claims. So that's what you see here, the claim reserve here. Every year end, we have the actuary do the calculation and give us what he says the reserve should be at the end of the fiscal year, and you have the 22 results here. And then in that report, he also projects into the future years, and so the number that you see in the 23 column here for reserves, the 5.4, is what he currently projects we'll need for the end of this year. So that information is there, and as you see, we have a net position since 20, our position 21, 22, and currently in 23, we have a positive net position projected in that fund. And if it were to occur that the position was going to be negative, I mean, we had heavy claims in a year, heavier than the actuary estimated, the next budget year, we would contribute from the general fund and the other funds, we would contribute an additional amount to the self-insurance fund to make sure we're covered there. So I don't know if you have any questions on these. What I have on the bottom is what our system shows as what's been actually paid out in cash during those years. And then Corey maintains that database with the administrator, so I don't know what kind of questions you might have about the fund itself. Of course, we can't speak to individual claims.
Right, I did want to preface it by saying we're not speaking of anything that's in the law office or anything like that, that this is exactly what I wanted to see, because it's always been pretty vague, the fund. And I think what you said about the reserves being sufficient to carry over is what I wanted to hear, if there was any exposure.
Yes, and one good thing you see is that the net position being positive means, even considering we've recorded the liability that the actuaries estimated, we have cash sitting there in addition to that in case there are additional claims that we have to pay out.
Thank you. Corey is here. Would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words about this?
My name is Corey Bradley. I'm the risk administrator for the city. The only thing I'll point out that between the Office of Law, myself, and our third-party administrator...
Corey, your mic's not on.
I'm sorry, I will start again. My name is Corey Bradley. I'm the risk administrator for the city. And the only thing I'll point out is between myself, the Office of Law, and our third-party administrator, Cisco, we do actively look at reserves. Reserves are very fluid when you start thinking about claims. So I may start a claim with a reserve number today. I can change that number next week. But we work pretty closely to make sure that we're, accurately keeping track of our reserves so that we know what the city's future liabilities are going to be.
Thank you. Do I have any questions? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. Ms. Dickinson, I noticed that all of the last column, the projected 23, all of those numbers, several of them, have decreased. Is that based upon the actuals in the previous years?
So
For example,
so those numbers represent the current fiscal year, and what I am projecting the year will end at using the paid claim information that I have to date, and my estimates are conservative, and the number that I show for claim reserves, the 5.456 million, comes from the actuarial report. It's what's estimated at the end of FY23 to be the actuarial liability. So it's taking current year activity and projecting it forward based on projected claims expenses and the actuary's estimate of what the liability needs to be at the end of the year.
So you're using half of the year.
Correct.
To base your
Correct.
position.
When I look in the system today, you see the last two lines on the chart I gave you are what's been paid to date. And using that trend, I estimated where I think will be total paid out at the end of the year, and then what we'll need to adjust to the actuary's reserve in addition to that. And I feel that I was very conservative in my estimate because although 6 months have passed, there may be some lag on paying claims. So I've estimated high. And what occurs there, when you asked about the amounts going down, cash is decreasing and the net position decreases. And that does say that we the funds net position is projected to decline slightly this fiscal year, although I believe that my estimates are very conservative, so it may not be as low as it's showing there.
Thank you. My question has to do with the last line, general liability and vehicles. That number went way down. And I remember, I guess it was in 21, when we had quite a few payouts. So I just want to acknowledge that when we said we needed to do things a little bit differently, as far as vehicles particularly, staff heard us. And that last number, I think, attests to that. Or am I misreading?
So in that column, for those two lines, I didn't give you a total for the year. I've just told you what we've paid to date. And it includes both general liability claims and vehicle claims. I don't think we've had much activity this year in vehicle claims. So most of that's going to be general liability claim activity, not vehicles. Vehicle liability is a very small portion of what we pay out typically.
Okay, I just recall us having an unusually large number of vehicle payouts in the past, but it seems like that's under control, so that was my point.
I think she's
So
referring to
Director Dickinson is
2020.
correct. Most of our vehicle claims tend to be smaller in nature, broken windshields, bumper damage. We don't see a lot of significant claims. We don't get total losses in vehicles, so most of that figure is going to be general liability.
Thank you.
I guess one question, and you don't have to answer it, is what is the major discrepancy that happened between 20 and 21 in our net position, which is a result of the claims? I think Sheila was alluding to that.
So it's going to be, it's probably a general liability claim, and that may be the year that we paid out the HACA settlement, correct?
Okay.
Yes, that's the year we paid out the HACA settlement. So that's what caused that big jump
Skewness,
in that
okay.
year.
Okay, all right. Any further questions? Alderwoman O'Neill?
No, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. And this is public, obviously.
It's yes, it's
just a
most of
public
it's available
summary.
publicly, except for what I've projected for '23. That's my current projection, and as long as we don't talk about individual claims,
Right.
all of this is public information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Corey. Joelle, did you want to say, you're just listening, make sure that we're in line. Yeah, we have Joelle, representative of the law office, assistant city attorney. The next one is just, I know that I didn't have a chance to talk to my colleagues about this one either, vacation week, but I did ask for a status of our fee waivers, how they compared to previous years, just so that we would have, a benchmark of what we're waiving.
Correct.
And if there was anything, that we should be concerned about or out of line or anything like that. And I didn't know if we had any, there's really nothing in the code that says, fee waivers up to a certain percent or anything like that. So, because I did some research, about how do other cities do this, and some do have that, fee waivers up to a certain percentage, but I don't think I want to get into that.
Yes, and all we did here was provide this summary with the resolution numbers and the amounts, and of course, fiscal year '21 was it was a full fiscal year of COVID. So we didn't have a lot of events going on that year. So I think that's why that's such a low year as far as fees waived. There weren't major events were not occurring that year. But the other years, at least for 22, 23, and 20 look pretty consistent. And I don't know if that's coincidental. Some of the numbers are the same activities, but some of them switch off.
Yeah, well, I think it reflects, and our due diligence, specifically our special events coordinator, that was several years ago. Alderwoman Finlayson Alderman Arnett and Alderman Budge put together this special events legislation to define, or that's basically where our limitation is on city. We don't call them sponsored events anymore, we call them supported events. So I think this reflects, that framework, and that's how we manage them, so.
Okay.
And could you tell us what is waived? Is it just like whatever's applicable to that event, like parking, or is it's not staff?
So in most cases, these amounts are set forth in the resolution, correct? When the resolution comes to you, it's a varied amount, and I can't answer the specifics of these. As you know, with the military bowl that we had that discussion, it's always been a capped amount of $15,000. But these other events
But
would
it's
be,
not,
for instance,
yeah.
up to, usually capped at a
Excuse
certain
me, I don't
amount.
have, where can I find this document? I'm not
Is it in
seeing
the
it.
same email?
It's
No, it wasn't attached to the email.
It's 2 emails.
I only have one from 9/11 with the one attachment.
While she's looking for it, though, it doesn't include staff time, right? Or does it? It does, how could you estimate
Only when
that?
it could if they were getting reimbursed for police or fire services, and we were waiving that. Other than that, not specifically, I'll say that, because if you look at some of these, they do have specific things they're waiving. Like in fiscal '22, Katie just pointed out, we had permitting fees for the Bates Middle School HVAC. Well, that's the permitting fees that the city would have charged them for the same project, but we've waived them. Well, permitting fees in their nature are trying to recoup the cost of the staff reviewing and issuing the permits. So indirectly, a permitting fee is the reimbursement for staff effort, but not directly staff time. It's not like our special events manager is calculating our time spent on planning the event and charging that. No, it's permitting fees for services that we provide for police and fire. Docking fees are some of these specific ones you see here. And that's supposed to recoup the cost of operating the dock. So indirectly, yes, it's trying to recoup some of our costs, and that may include staff time.
So let me correct what I said previously. That chunk of the code where we have city supported, instead of sponsored, we have to change that. It's per code. City sponsored events. That chunk of the code is one resolution, and I think my colleagues remember that there's a resolution saying these are our city sponsored events, and then you can see the jump up just a little bit from 22 to 23, because I think that was probably, we added, I think Juneteenth, right? So it's pretty consistent. And so then this, you can see what's in addition to that. Yeah. Kate Connolly, do you have anything to add to that? How you estimate it, or what the procedure is, or anything like that?
Katie Connolly, budget manager. No, I was hanging out to help Jody out if she needed it. I just wanted to clarify on city-sponsored events, that can range from, for example, the Elks Club, we've waived police overtime, but for, the Maritime Republic of Eastport, we waived parking.
Right.
So it does vary, but within that resolution typically, but the other ones are pretty specific as far as permitting fees, docking fees.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues?
I'm afraid I cannot,
Oh,
I'm trying to read it, so I'm not going to have any questions at this time.
okay. We'll get you a copy. Alderman O'Neill, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you very much for providing these two summaries. And is there any other update, Director Dickinson?
No, as you know, I have been missing from the last two finance committee
Oh, yeah,
meetings.
you were in New York, weren't you?
No,
where did you go?
that was before. That was in
okay.
November, but On the 7th of December, we had our bond sale, and on the 21st of December, we actually settled the bond sale,
Oh,
which is when
okay.
all the financial transactions happen, and it gets kind of complicated. So I was in my office both days watching these events and participating in transfers, recording transfers in and transfers out. And so it was a very successful sale, and we have money at a trustee waiting to pay off the sub-debt from the P3 arrangement, the concession agreement sub-debt, and that will be paid off early February. So that money's at a trustee waiting for that transaction.
So does that go back into the concession payment, or, I don't have my,
So it's more complicated than that, of course.
okay. Yeah,
But the City Dock project had been funded with concession payment money from the original transaction in September. We used a portion of that concession payment to refund this sub-debt, but then we issued bonds, city bonds, to put back into the City Dock project. So the City Dock project has the same amount of funding as it did, just from different sources. And the money that the concession payment went to the trustee, along with some of the bond proceeds, so that in February, when we pay off that sub-debt, there's enough cash sitting there and the trustee will pay off that debt.
so it sounds like it all went well.
Yes, but yes, it's
Almost-
very complicated.
Yeah.
It ends a very complicated year
Yeah, wow.
with this arrangement that we have.
Especially with the economic climate, you know, in the bond market, it just seems like it really went.
Yes,
well.
we got, relative to what was going on at the time with the interest rates, we sold at a very good time, and the rates were favorable, even more favorable than our financial advisors were anticipating. So we came out better than we had thought. The interest rates were just adjusting downward slightly on municipal debt, so we got a good deal on our bonds.
Was that because of the infrastructure element of the scope of work or anything that was?
I think it's just a market-driven, it's all
Okay.
market-driven. We just hit the right few days on the sale.
Any questions?
Yeah, I
on-
think,
Oh, wait.
I think
it's not in front
Alderwoman,
of
I
us.
think Alderwoman Finlayson had her hand up.
Alderman Finlayson?
Yeah, well, two questions. One you just touched on. What was the interest rate we were able to get? And
Oh.
secondly, what was the total amount of that sub-debt?
Hold on. I'm going to scan through a memo that I have open right now to see if I can find that specific information for you.
I mean, it can be part of your next month or your next week's report.
Yeah, what I'll do is, I believe I sent out an email when it happened with some of the details,
Yeah.
but we do have other documentation that's more formal that has it kind of
Yeah.
all outlined that I can send you.
Yeah, I know that when you
That
presented a
would be
couple.
appreciated.
Yeah, I think Alderwoman Finlayson asked for a quarterly update or something, but we could, or, that presentation was really good that we thought we should have an update on that. But next meeting, you can just give us some real numbers. on-
I'll just send some of the documentation I have in my
Okay.
files for the bond sale, so you can have it in hand if you need to
Okay.
refer to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, I don't know if you have any more questions on the bond sale itself. We're still trying to fill several open positions, but we're at the point where we're interviewing,
Oh, good.
starting to interview this week and next week, and hopefully we'll find some good candidates there. And we're going to start budget meetings with the departments. The first one being, I think, later on this month, correct? And our meetings, the administration's meetings with the departments to start to formulate their budget needs. And we're trying to wrap up the annual financial report for '22. That's been just a little bit of a struggle. only because of manpower on our side mostly. The auditors have had a change out in personnel as well, but that didn't impact it as much as our only having my assistant finance director mostly working on pulling the report together. So it's been a cumbersome process. And that's all I had on my report. I don't know if you have any other questions.
I won, how are you handling enhancements this budget cycle with the departments? Enhancements, are they required to list them separately?
Yes, yes. The budget memo, which I believe you all had a copy of the budget memo, spells out the criteria they're to use when asking for their budget numbers. It includes their as-is services, delivering services at the same level, and any enhancement to that they have to explain separately and on an enhancement request.
Let me just bring this up because this was an issue last time, and I think my colleagues will agree with me, is it would be really helpful when the mayor's budget comes to us that we know what enhancements are included from the list and what remain to be reviewed. I'm assuming that list of enhancements is like finite, and it was a little bit different last year. We asked in the 11th hour for a list because so then it would be helpful if we had that.
So typically the budget book as prepared includes a list of things that are in the budget, any new items that are in the budget. And so what you're asking for is the enhancements that were granted or both granted and not granted?
There were enhancements, we understand, that were not included in the mayor's budget, and we weren't, as a council or finance committee, we didn't know what those were. Am I correct, colleagues, in that situation? Alderman Finlayson?
Madam Chair, this has been treated differently from year to year. We have had city administrators who have not included enhancements in the budget books that we receive. And we have had city managers who have included enhancements, funded, not funded, because of course those that are funded are already included in the mayor's budget. I think what we want to see, and we've asked for, is the enhancements that are not included in the mayor's budget.
Yeah, that's what you asked for last time. We wanted to see those. And I think it's a city manager issue.
Yes, it is. And I was just going to say to you that normally when we do the budget book and we have the highlights, we'll only tell you the enhancements that we funded, not the ones we didn't fund.
Correct.
If you want to seek that information, that'll have to come from the city manager, and that will be his decision.
Okay. So we'll make our request. Maybe this Saturday is a good time to mention that. I think the thought is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, we'd like to know
What wasn't funded?
what wasn't funded.
I think last year we actually asked each department head what enhancements were not included.
Yeah,
And they gave us that information.
right. So it shouldn't get to that point, So we'll discuss it with the city manager on.
Yes, that's the city manager's
involved.
process and decision,
Yeah.
not mine.
Okay, and I hear that a representative from finance will be at the Saturday session.
Katie will be there, yes.
Are you coming back, Alderwoman Finlayson, for Saturday?
I will be back this evening.
Okay, not flying Southwest. No, I guess they're in.
I am.
I guess
I
they're all.
am flying Southwest.
You are?
They're
Yeah.
trying to redeem themselves.
Yeah.
And I bought a new tracker for my luggage, so.
Yeah. All righty. I think we have finished the agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. I didn't have my third cup of coffee today, so. All righty.
Have a good one.